Hi everyone, this video will give you a quick overview of the Rhetorical production project. If you haven't done it yet, my first suggestion would be to go over to our Canvas site and look at the full assignment description for this project. So if you just scroll down to week 11, you can find the assignment description right here, or you can find it at the bottom of the Rhetorical production proposal assignment. So the full assignment sheet is here. This is what the full assignment sheet looks like. It's a rather long document, but walks you through all of the different steps that we'll be doing over the next 5 weeks. So there's a lot of information here, but you don't need to see it all at once. But I'd take a look at this first, and that should help you conceptualize the project, and then you can use this video primarily as a way to reinforce certain ideas or clarify things. So let's jump into it. The assignment asks you to create a text for a specific audience about a specific rhetorical theory. There's a lot of range within the assignment based upon that description. So let's talk about some of the main points here. First of all, you can work individually or in groups. If you choose to work in a group, you'll need to make sure that the scope of the project really demands multiple group members. So the conception of the overall project is that it's equivalent to a final assignment or a final essay in a normal upper division course. In this case, if you want to work in groups, you need to think about a project that's going to require multiple people doing that much work in order for it to be successful. Second, your project really should focus on a specific rhetorical theory. We're going to go into a lot of examples of these by the end of the video, but go back through your textbook, look at the different theories, identify specific ones that are really compelling to you, and start thinking about how you can use those as the core of your project. There are a few caveats with this. I want you to really think about this as an advanced rhetorical theory course. So this is an upper division course. You should not be focusing on the most basic of rhetorical theories. So I'm not going to accept projects that are on ethos, pathos, logos, or the 5 canons, or anything else that you might have learned in a freshman writing course. Third thing, you really should be doing something or making something that meets the needs of a specific and real audience. So as you think about this, continue to think about your audience and find ways that you can create something that's going to help them use rhetorical theory. You should also be becoming the local expert in this specific theory, so you're going to need to do research beyond the textbook itself. You also need to be making your own content. Please don't plagiarize any content for this project. Some of the least successful projects that I've seen have tried to copy things directly from our textbook or from other sources, and then just put them into a slightly different form. That's not going to meet the type of engagement and the type of effort that I'm really looking for in this project. Finally, please try to be creative and try to have fun with this. So this project is going to work so much better if it's something that you really want to do on some level. So I'm going to go into some examples, but if you really want to get working with making videos, then make a video. If you're really interested in things like comic books, consider making a comic book. If you really find the idea of trying to create a game compelling, then create a game. So here are some different examples from past ones. I had a student who did a TED Talk at his local church about muted group theory, and he eventually turned in a video that interspersed a recording of that speech, the video of that speech, with his presentation slides, much like what you would see if you looked at a professional TED Talk video. I had another group that did a social card game on the mediation of rhetoric. So this game had approximately 200 or 250 different cards, and it really brought people through a lot of different ways of looking at rhetoric and media combined. I had another student who did a dramatic narrative video on invitational rhetoric. So this one had scene cuts and different camera angles that really helped to convey the story that was being told in this video. I had a student who did a board game on rhetorics of oppression and liberation. And this board game had cards, but also had each person adopting a specific character that was affected in different ways by the cards. So there were complex rules that really drew out the concept of rhetorics of oppression and liberation and how they operate. And then finally, I also had a student who created a comic book on Chinese rhetorics for students who were going to be studying abroad. And this was a way to convey these rhetorics in both textual and visual forms. So our main project steps are the proposal, the annotated bibliography, a peer-reviewed draft, peer-reviewed responses, and then a final version. So this first step will be the proposal, and your main goal here is just to outline a project that is compelling and interesting and convince me that you can carry it out. The proposal is also going to be a good stage for us to discuss what your project can be so that we can really make sure that you have a solid conception for it at the outset. The annotated bibliography is primarily intended to get you to do some research beyond our textbook so that you are becoming the local expert in the specific rhetorical theory. The peer review is a chance to have a draft your project ready and have other people give you some feedback. Now, the draft here is open to some flexibility. So if you're giving a TED Talk, it's not going to be expected that you have a recording of that TED Talk ready for the peer review. You might have your speech script and some slides ready so that people can give you some feedback on the actual content of it before you go ahead and present this talk to a real audience and record it. And then finally, you're going to have a final version, like usual, which I will evaluate. So let's talk a little bit more about the proposal. The proposal is going to be due this first week, and the primary idea in the proposal is to think through all the details of your project and to give me sufficient detail so that I understand how you're going to be carrying out the project. So you should be discussing things like the rhetorical theory that you're focusing on, the format of the project, the intended audience of the project. That third question, how you will submit the project at the end, is also important because if you're giving a live TED Talk to people, I also need to know what you're going to be submitting at the end of the project. So sometimes your project is going to have a initial form and then it's going to need to be recorded in some way so that you can actually submit that and I can evaluate it. And then some other questions like fit between theory, form, and audience, what you still need to learn, what are some potential issues, and where you're going to go to learn some more information. So let's talk a little bit about the brainstorming process here, because this is really the central aspect of the proposal. I want you to go out and start thinking about the full range of projects you can do and find one that's going to be compelling and valuable and interesting for you to do. So the place I'd usually start is theories. Go back through our textbook, look at your QCCs, look at the table of contents in the textbook, look at our different modules. Start just thinking about all of the different theories that we have discussed, and also take a look ahead at some of the ones that we will discuss, because maybe there's going to be some there that are going to be really compelling to you. And start just creating a list of those different theories that you might do a project on. So here are some different theories that I just identified quickly. Things like muted group theory, rhetorics of survivance, which will be in our unit on non-Western rhetorics, invitational rhetoric, symbolic convergence, and ideographs. So just thinking about a number of different specific rhetorical theories that you might focus on in your project. Then I'd start thinking about audiences. Think about groups of people that you interact with regularly. Think about people who might value or benefit from some information on different rhetorical theories. And start trying to match these up with different theories that you've identified. Again, at this point, try and keep a range of options open, because the more you keep this range open, the more you're going to have the ability to start identifying some creative connections. So, maybe literature professors is one of my audiences. I work in an English department, and while my own program is on writing and rhetoric, I do interact a lot with literature professors. I teach both in person and online, so maybe I'd want to create something for in-person students. I have a dog and regularly go to the dog park. Maybe I could create something for people who are using the dog park regularly. I also interact regularly with a local theater group. Maybe I could create something on rhetoric for them. And then finally, I also regularly play volleyball with the same group. Maybe something related to rhetoric could be useful to that volleyball group. Then finally, I'd start thinking about the text or formats or ways that you can get this particular rhetorical theory to this particular audience. So I'd start matching up things at this point. The literature professors are often driving to campus. They have time in that space to listen to an audio text, so maybe something like a podcast that really helped them understand meta-group theory and think about how to apply it to their work could be useful. Since my in-person students are fairly used to a lecture style, maybe I could do a upbeat TED Talk style lecture and then record it and then also remediate it for other people in other environments. The dog park users are all in the same space, so maybe an augmented reality tour would be useful to them. There are a lot of different software out there that you can use in order to help lead people through a space and discuss particular concepts. Maybe I would want to create a party-style card game for the local theater group, so something that they can do socially and that would be entertaining, but also really help them start thinking about the specific rhetorical theory in their environment. And then since the volleyball group often communicates also through social media, maybe a social media campaign would be useful for helping them conceptualize how the specific rhetorical theory impacts their communication. So no matter what you do, I want you to think about the different types of things that you are interested in and the ways that you can really carry out those things through this project. So there's a lot of range on it. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me, send me a message or an email. And if you have an idea for a project that you just want to run by me before you submit the full proposal, also send me that. I'm happy to give you feedback as you develop the proposals and help you really try to identify and narrow in on a really valuable and interesting project that you're going to enjoy working on over the next several weeks.